Agricultural experts are predicting that the sector will grow this year due to prospects of bountiful crops across the country. However, continuous power cuts, poor road infrastructure and water issues continue to stifle the industry. Let's speak more about this with agricultural economist with Stellenbosch University, Wandile Sihlobo, who joins us now via our video link this morning. Lovely to see you, sir. Thanks very much indeed for making time to speak to us. You know, those issues I've mentioned, the power cuts, the poor infrastructure on the roads, water issues, none of those are actually new, but the sense I'm getting is that things have gotten a whole lot worse.
Absolutely, and I think the issues of roads, we've had like 4 years of good rainfall across the country, which was favorable for farmers in terms of production. But these heavy rains have also destroyed the infrastructure that was already poorly maintained. If you think about the road networks in a number of provinces, Eastern Cape, Free State, Limpopo, Northwest, we see it all over the country. And I think that's what now has worsened this challenge today. And of course, the power issues, we all know about the challenges about that. Even though the Department of Agriculture, working with industry and ESCOM, have put some of the measures to say, at least in the near term, they could assist the sector, hence the bountiful harvest that you referred to in your introduction.
Yeah. Have we come any closer to being able to quantify these losses, potential or already incurred?
I would say not necessarily as per se as losses, but rather what you get to see is that farmers in some areas, they take money that could have been reinvested into the business and having to use that to maintain certain routes that link the particular farm with the commercial route to take the produce out, but also bringing certain necessary inputs into the farms become a major issue, which is why my argument was saying, look, the municipalities really have to upper their socks and make sure that they maintain the roads, especially in the rural towns, where when you look at some of these rural towns, you say, what's the engine for economy, for jobs, for optimism? It's usually either an agribusiness and a number of farms around. You want to take care of those because failure to do that also weighs into the fortunes of that town and the jobs and the people there.
Absolutely. There's no overstating the importance of the sector, no matter where you find yourself in this country. But we've also spent a considerable amount of time speaking about the barriers to entry, specifically for small black farmers. These issues obviously not helping at all.
Absolutely, they are not helping at all because what you have, we've discussed now the issue of roads, we've discussed the issue of power cuts, but you also have the rise in crime generally in the country, but more acutely also within the farming sector in a sense that there is stock theft, there is harvest theft that we see. If you are a major farmer, you do have some little bit of flexibility in your balance sheet. You can put some security measures that in place. But if you are a new entrant farmer with not really much strong balance sheet, it's very difficult to put all of these in place. All of these become some of the issues that now farmers have to be seized with these things instead of focusing on their business of farming, which is producing the food that we need for export markets and also for our general population. So very much a deficit for the new entrant participants in the sector.
Yeah, I mean, you speak about export markets. When we talk about gains currently in our current climate, the weaker rand has two stories, right? It depends how you trade with the international market. Not great for some people, but if you're exporting, perhaps like most of our farmers or a lot of our farmers, it could be good news.
It could be good news, but you won't last for long. For example, I mean, when you think about South Africa's agricultural sector, we export roughly about 50% of what we produce in value terms. That earns us good capital because, I mean, the sector, think about 2022, the exports of the sector hit the record figure of about $12.8 billion. Now, the weaker rand makes the products out of South Africa to be competitively priced. The grains that we now going to be going in the export season for, as well as citrus, we're hoping that they will be more competitive in the export markets. But then the turnaround of this matter is that around about August this year, farmers will have to already start stocking the inputs for the next season. That's the 2023-24 production season. And South Africa sits in a very tricky position in a sense that we import about 80% of our 2 million tons of fertilizer that we use a year as a nation. We also import roughly 98% of the agrochemicals. So the hope will be that the rand is weaker when you are in export season and reasonably stronger when you have to import the inputs. But we know that no one actually has a better handle about how these markets will go. But that's the dilemma that one finds themselves in.
Yeah, and I suppose the volatility in the global community is not really helping, and the fact that, look, let's face it, a lot of people beyond our borders are watching how we're going to deal with this Putin dilemma, as I've called it. But perhaps I digress slightly. When we talk about the concerns for investment in farming in the context of everything we've discussed, how worried should we be about that? You know, that there are people who have the option to leave, and they will do that, and that will obviously leave me and you and many other people who rely on the sector in a worse off position.
I think when we look at the sector as it is today, there's a lot of investment that has actually gone through this sector. I mean, I can take you back to 1994. If you look at South Africa's agriculture, both in value and in volume terms today compared to 1994, it has more than doubled. And if you look at what has been at the core of that optimism and growth in the sector, has been, of course, the expansion of export markets, but also investment on ensuring we have technologies that boost productivity. Technology in a mechanical way, but also biological stance. And, of course, the infrastructure in the farms. But then the question today is to say, are we going from here going forward? We already see that. Think about the sentiment, the agribusiness confidence index that we measure at the agribusiness chamber with the IDC. It already shows that over the past 2 quarters, there's starting to be worries in the sector. And if that continues for some time, of course, then it could present risks and investments which are necessary for long-term growth. But we know what we need to resolve so that the optimism can increase and the investments can come up. And those are relating to the issues we're talking about, dealing with the issue of security, dealing with the issues of roads in rural town, and of course making sure that some of the legislations within the government that allow for registration of certain seeds and medicine, they are all addressed, because not all of these need money. Some are regulatory stuff. And that's the conversation happening between private sector organized agriculture and the department, so that this sector at least can remain an important one and playing a crucial part in our society.
Absolutely. And, you know, municipalities, as you've mentioned, have a big role to play. But as irony would have it, yesterday we heard from the Water and Sanitation Department speaking about how municipalities and the systems that they run have led to a situation where the country is now dealing with a situation where about 50% of its drinking water is of a poor quality. Now, I don't know what the standards are in farming and agriculture, broadly speaking, but I wonder if that kind of stat has any impact on the industry.
I think how we look at it in a sector, we always say, look, we have to invest as a country in our network industries. And when we think about the network industries, then we put everything there. We put rail, we put roads, we put water all into together. And I think the infrastructure side of water has not been as properly maintained. I mean, I can give you an example of the Eastern Cape in somewhere in Nlega, where we have dairy farmers. They struggle with irrigation. The infrastructure is not in good order. But also when they want to deliver some of their inputs in their farms, these issues of roads become a challenge. So there is that. I would emphasize more on agriculture and saying let's have better regulation in water than what we've seen in the news much of this week. And also let's invest on strengthening the infrastructure. And if we do that, I think we'll go forward, because I think we have to start looking at agriculture not only as a sector that is good for food security and all of that, which it does, but I think it's also an important economic sector that still holds a potential for growth and bringing new farmers, creating nearly 1 million jobs that can still be done in primary agriculture combined with agro-processing. And all of these are things that we need in an economy that is in a tough position as South Africa.
Absolutely. You know, in many instances, these all feel like own goals, things we could definitely avoid if we all just put our heads together and do what needs to be done. Thanks for helping us understand the lay of the land, so to speak. Excuse the pun. I appreciate your time. Wandile Sihlobo is an agricultural economist with Stellenbosch University.